I am going to call the meeting to order and then ask commission members to introduce themselves. Good afternoon. The Disability Commission will now come to order. I'm Senator Barbara Favola. I represent portions of Northern Virginia, parts of Arlington, Fairfax, and Loudoun. And I'm happy to be here, and welcome to those of you who are joining us in person and virtually. I'll go to my far left. Gail.
Hi, thank you, Chair Favola. I'm Gail Brunk, and I'm the Executive Director for Valley Associates for Independent Living in Harrisonburg, Center for Independent Living, and the President of the Virginia Association for Centers for Independent Living, and very pleased to have been appointed by the Speaker of the House, Todd Gilbert. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Senator Ghazala Hashmi, and I represent the 10th Senatorial District, which is parts of City of Richmond and Chesterfield and Powhatan County.
Thank you.
Delegate Bobby Orrock, 54th District, most of Spotsylvania, and a little bit of Caroline.
Delegate Otto Waxman, 75th District, counties of Sussex, Greensville, City of Emporia, Southampton County, Brunswick County, Franklin City, and portions of Lunenburg.
Hello, Delegate Philip Scott from the 88th District, parts of Spotsylvania County, Stafford County, City of Fredericksburg, and Fauquier County.
Connor?
My name is Connor Cummings. I am a self-advocate on both state and national levels. I work as a Managing Director of the Zoom Autism Magazine. Thank you.
I'm John Tollish, a member of the Disability Commission from Alexandria and Southern Fairfax County. And long ago, in the last century, I worked while I was in law school part-time for the office of the New York State Advocate for the Disabled. And thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay, I think our introductions have been completed. So that would constitute our roll call, would it not? Okay, thank you. Why don't we go to the first item on the agenda, and I know Ryan Brimmer will talk to us. I believe this is a revised version of everywhere in the statutes that you could find that would change the phrase disabled to challenged or just handicapped to disabled, I guess.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. So just a brief recap of where this stands. The last meeting I presented a bill draft to remove all the references to handicapped within the Code of Virginia. So we took out 70 some odd references and replaced it with disabilities instead. The Commission and the public generally liked the bill draft, but asked to be a little bit more consistent in the use of what's referred to as person-first language. So for those that may not be familiar, that's instead of using terms like disabled, using terms like individuals with disabilities or persons with disabilities, generally viewed as just more personalized, humanizing, individualized, that type of thing. So I went back through and incorporated that drafting convention. Special thanks to the Arc of Virginia and others who provided some assistance on the technicals of that. But that's the new bill draft that you have in your packet today, and that's really all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bremer. I will ask commission members if they have any questions, and then we will take one last comment on this changing from handicap to individual or individuals with disabilities. Did you have... Ms. Cummings?
I just was wanting to make clear that you're going to do it evenly between people first and identity first.
Could you explain a little bit more?
So from all the people that we have been speaking with, especially the autistic world, they want disabled person versus person with disability. So we are looking to make sure that it's even in there so that you're referencing both.
Madam Chair, I can go back through the bill draft. I think that we probably have a pretty good balance in the bill, just kind of organically. I'll also mention that this is roughly 24 code sections that this bill is bringing in. There are countless other code sections in the Code of Virginia that are, I think, going to be kind of organically balanced with person first versus individual first.
It might.
I'm not sure that
it might work out.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we're necessarily going to be drastically changing the balance in the Code of Virginia,
Okay.
one way or the other.
I think that's right. I think the intent here was really to ensure that individuals were identified. We personalized this, that they're people here
Right.
with disabilities. That was the intent. And my read of this is that we did capture that thanks to the comments that came in from many advocates and your fine work. So I will open it up. If there are any further comments from the general public on this draft, if you like it, you can just say, yes, I like it, and we'll go forward with legislation on it. If you have any additional tweaks, we would like to hear that as well. So for those in the audience, if you would like to comment, this is the time.
If you're in the Zoom room and you would like to speak virtually, please raise your hand electronically, and I'll bring you into the room.
Okay, there's one speaker here in front of us.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Terry Morgan, the Executive Director with the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities, and just want to thank the Commission again for bringing this forward, and also thank the ARC of Virginia and the other advocates who have really used their voices in a really meaningful way, and we support this. Thank you.
Great, thank you. John, do you have a comment?
I just wanted to tell Ryan that I appreciated, the way he worked on people with hearing impairment or hard of hearing people. I appreciate it. Thank these terms. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tollers. Anybody in the Zoom room?
Madam Chair, we do have one person, and I would like to make the announcement again that if you are in the Zoom room and you would like to speak, please raise your hand electronically, and I will bring you into the room. Madam Chair, there are two individuals right now. It'll take me a second to get them into the room, but first will be Jennifer Whitborg, and then will be Julian Cosgrove. Ms. Whitborg, if you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
I can't see the interpreter on the Zoom screen. I just wanted to let you know that I am struggling with that. And I did want to request that when we are referred to, it is deaf people, not people with deafness, people with hearing impairment. We prefer the identity first. So deaf and hard of hearing people or people with hearing loss would be the terms that we in the community support. And now I don't know if I should stay on the screen or not.
Have you completed your remarks? And I don't see the interpreter.
Yes,
so.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. So because you can't see it, I will let you know that the interpreter, I believe, is giving this information to the person who's speaking. I think that she was done.
Okay.
And so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and bring in Julian Cosgrove to go ahead and speak.
Okay.
Thank you. My name is Julian Cosgrove, and I am the Vice President of Government and Public Relations at Melwood. Melwood is a leading employer, advocate, and service provider for people with disabilities with 1,600 employees, nearly 1,000 of whom have significant disabilities, and serving an additional 2,500 people across Virginia, Maryland, and DC. We wanted to thank the Commission for the work. We absolutely support this draft and look forward to being able to support the legislation going forward.
Thank you very much.
And so, Madam Chair, with that, there are no more hands raised in the Zoom room.
Okay. Thank you. So the issue is now before the commission, and I would like a motion to adopt this draft and move forward with
Madam Chair.
legislation. Yes, Delegate Orrock.
I would move that the commission endorse the draft as before us and recommend it be prepared for introduction in the 23 session.
Okay, a motion has been made by Delegate Orrock and seconded by Delegate Hope. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing none. Anybody wishing to abstain? Hearing none. Okay, that motion passes unanimously, and we will get legislation drafted, and 2 members of the commission will be carrying it, a delegate and a senator. Thank you, colleagues. Let's move on. We have 2 presentations before us before we get to the work plan, which will be a very robust conversation, I'm sure. So why don't we move forward with a briefing on accommodations for individuals with disabilities in state parks. Frank Stovall it will be the presenter, and he's the Deputy Director of Operations for the Department of Conservation and Recreation.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Thank you for having me today. I believe this is the clicker. My name is Frank Stovall. I'm the Deputy Director of Operations for DCR. What that means is I manage a portfolio of forward-facing services that include Virginia State Parks, our Natural Area Preserve Program, our Natural Heritage Division, our Design and Construction and Engineering Unit, and our Land Conservation Operations. But 20 years ago, after graduating from Virginia Tech, I was a park ranger in the field, and like every good park ranger, I have a trail map for you today of where we're going.
Okay.
Over the next few minutes, I want to share with you some basic information about Virginia State Parks, challenges that we face in bringing accessibility to our parks, our currently accessible facilities, some recent additions and current projects, and then next steps that we intend to take going forward. Like most state park systems, our system was born in the mid-1920s, and it was really driven by petitions from the people. The Virginia General Assembly created the Commission of Conservation and Development in 1926. That was the state agency that preceded DCR. And the new organization was charged with the acquisition, preservation, development, and maintenance of areas, properties, land, or estates of scenic beauty, of recreational utility, historical interest, remarkable phenomena, and other unusual features. Such acquisitions and developments are to be for the use, observation, education, health, and pleasure of the people. Virginia would convince the President of the United States that the Civilian Conservation Corps could and should be used to develop a system of state parks, and because we always do things big, we would do something no one else had done. We would open not one state park, but an entire system, spread across the Commonwealth just 10 years later on June 15, 1936. Now, 86 years later, we are a system of 41 state parks, soon to be 42, protecting, preserving, and interpreting key historic stories, critical natural habitat, nationally significant natural wonders, and some of the best forests, streams, rivers, lakes, and ocean views in the country. You can snag a trout from a cold mountain lake. You can touch the Chesapeake Bay. You can explore miles of trails. You can disconnect from cell phones and reconnect with something amazing. And as a former park ranger, that's just awesome. But Virginia State Parks are more than that. For a lot of communities near our parks, we are a key economic driver. In 2021, 7.9 million people visited a Virginia State Park, and they left behind an economic impact on our state of $324 million. Fees for service generated over $30 million in revenue, and that, along with general fund support, funds all the things needed to make the park system run, such as maintenance, operations, public safety, education programs, and resource management. The 7.9 million visitors that we host have an impact on a burden system, and we've identified over $250 million in unfunded maintenance needs and an additional $150 million in priority projects. However, our Virginia State Park Rangers take the For the People language that the General Assembly passed in 1926 to heart. As a public-facing Parks and Recreation division of a much larger state agency, Virginia State Parks understands and acknowledges the requirements of the ADA and how it influences park programming, operation, and design. We strive to make each one of our 41 state parks as barrier-free as possible for those with limited mobility and other disabilities. When it comes to providing for accessibility in state parks and in any park setting, there are challenges that we face as park systems. Those challenges include the terrain and natural conditions, limitations that come from the impact that certain types of improvements might have on a historic structure or a critical habitat or species. We've been building parks for 86 years, and sometimes what was considered to be code compliant when it was built doesn't meet the needs of today's park user or the current code. Those challenges aside, whenever we undertake new construction or significant renovations to a park facility, we adhere to the ADA requirements for that type of structure. When we build new campsites and cabins in our parks, a percentage of these facilities must meet accessibility requirements. Currently, our system provides accessible water access ranging from accessible boat ramps to specifically and specially designed canoe and kayak launches that allow individuals with disabilities access to the water. We provide accessible fishing areas that range from fishing piers to fishing nodes or small platforms that are built out along the shoreline to allow those with limited mobility access to the water. We provide compliant picnic shelters and playgrounds, and our visitor centers and education facilities and the exhibits inside them meet the code in place at the time they were built or last renovated. We also provide accessible camping sites, campground bathhouses, cabins, lodges, and yurts. But many people come to our parks for the over 600 miles of trails. We offer trails that allow people to enjoy and access the outdoors, and several of our parks have accessible trails that vary in length. Our two rail trail state parks have very slight grades and hard-packed natural surfaces that can be enjoyed by people with many different abilities. We communicate about detailed information about accessible facilities on our agency's website, both through a central accessibility page and with a section on each individual park. We also encourage people to contact the park they are interested in directly, as park rangers are able to provide detailed information about what is available. We've recently completed several projects that meet the current ADA requirements, including the soon-to-open Inn at Foster Falls, cabins and lodges at multiple state parks. We've also completed the Walnut Valley Farmhouse at Chip Oaks State Park, which is completely accessible and available for use. And we're also in the process of completing renovations at Douthit and Ferrystone State Parks, which will result in additional cabin options for guests with disabilities, including making some of the historic 1936-era log cabins, the ones that front the lake that everyone wants to use, completely accessible for those with mobility challenges. These are images of recently completed lodges and cabins that meet the ADA. Additional projects include this spray ground facility at Occoneechee State Park and improvements along the High Bridge Trail. We'll soon complete a boat ramp at Widewater State Park, providing full access to the Potomac River. And we have renovated comfort stations, playgrounds, and other facilities to improve accessibility and remove barriers. This is a view of our fully accessible picnic shelter and playground at Powhatan State Park. Outside of the Park Service, our design and construction unit implemented the Trail Access Grant Program in 2021. This provides $150,000 in grants to local communities and park systems. The Trail Access Grants Program is a 100% reimbursement program for trail projects that increase access to existing land and water trails and trail features for people with disabilities. Funding for the program comes from the Virginia taxpayer donations of all or a portion of their income tax returns to the Open Space Conservation and Recreation Fund. On the horizon, we are renovating cabins and lodges at 3 state parks, which will result in additional ADA-compliant lodging. We also have renovation projects at Claytor Lake and Bear Creek Lake, which will improve access. And currently under construction is a visitor center at High Bridge Trail State Park, which will also be fully accessible. The federally mandated statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, or SCORP, known in Virginia as the Virginia Outdoors Plan, is currently undergoing its required 2023 revision. This is a plan that has to be revised every 5 years. It will include information regarding accessibility and needs in state and local outdoor recreation facilities. The Virginia State Park System is currently implementing a full review of all owned facilities to identify needs, including maintenance, operational, and accessibility needs, which will then influence our decision-making regarding the allocation of our resources for maintenance and upgrades. And finally, it is worth noting that each state park must go through a master planning review every 10 years in accordance with the Code of Virginia. These reviews, which include public comment opportunities, are currently being expanded in scope to address additional resource management, education, and accessibility needs as part of these 10-year plans. My time with you today is limited, but I'd love to go on and be able to tell you about the fact that our mountain biking trails and facilities at Pocahontas State Park draw people with disabilities from all over the country because they're considered to be some of the best in the nation. And as I said earlier, we're really excited about the opportunity to retrofit and upgrade our historic facilities so that they're more accessible. But I'll be happy to answer any questions you have, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you, Mr. Stovall. I can see you're very enthusiastic. I just have one question. When will your report be completed, the 2023 review, and will you have recommendations on how to improve accessibility in that report?
The 2023 report, the Virginia Outdoors Plan, has to be completed by December 23 in order for the Commonwealth of Virginia to remain eligible for land and water conservation funds, both at the state level and at the local level. So there will be projects and recommendations outlined in that report. Those projects and recommendations come from information that we receive from each individual planning district and from community surveys, both a crowdsourced survey and a survey being conducted by VCU on our behalf.
Thank you. I hope that you will just make sure the commission members here are aware of the report and get a copy or at least a link to the report if it's posted on site. We would be very interested in the recommendations.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, Delegate O'Rourke.
Madam Chairman, if I may comment on a couple of questions. First of all, if anybody wants to see an example of an agency that is doing more with less, our state park system is facing ever-increasing demands on their services and not getting any real more money. And so that kind of then leads to my questions. I know currently state park systems are looking at several, if not in the tens of millions of dollars in unmet capital needs that are already outstanding. Do those include the capital funds necessary to make the parks ADA compliant under today's federal standards?
So right now we have a $250 million, in excess of $250 million maintenance backlog. We also have a separate list, which we're calling the priority projects list, which is right now around $157 million. Both of those lists contain individual projects designed to meet the standard.
Madam Chairman, follow up.
Yes, Delegate O'Rourke.
But I presume that doesn't meet all of the needs. And so my next is kind of an ask on a couple areas. Could y'all, either as part of your report, kind of tell us what the roadmap funding would be and a timeline, because I presume that's part of the objective, is trying to find a timeline where you can fully address them. And secondly, has there been consideration given to requesting a bond referendum so that y'all might actually get with the support of the public, who is right now kind of hesitant to other means of financing y'all, but to give y'all the bond monies necessary to make the capital improvements, because we know y'all are a moneymaker in the grand scheme of things, not just within the park system, but the local economies that surround them as people come and utilize. Is that something that's been kicked around or no, on the bonds in particular?
So let me address the first question first, which is the reporting. I can tell you that the 250 million maintenance backlog is based on our observations in the field. We have over 1,200 structures. Not every structure has been analyzed or reviewed. So we're in the process now of trying to implement, business practice style processes for analyzing our facilities and determining what basic maintenance needs are there, what improvements could be made, and then long-term, what we should do in parks to remove barriers. So that list is going to grow over time as we get a better handle on the challenges that we're facing. And truthfully, I feel like we're about 2 years behind on creating that list because COVID had a much different impact on state parks and outdoor recreation in the Commonwealth and nationally than in some other areas. People found they could go to parks. And so, normally you might have trouble getting into a park like Leesylvania on a Saturday because of the crowd. All of a sudden, those crowds are 7 days a week. So we were focused daily on operations and management and not necessarily on that long-term planning that we need to focus on. As far as a bond referendum, the State Park Service is always looking at ways to improve revenue, and I'll leave it at that.
And Madam Chairman, if I want to.
Yes, Delegate O'Rourke.
And I presume as Brandywine Park will start to come online there in Culpeper with a partnership between the Historic Trust, Battlefield Historic Trust, all those facilities, because they are going to be new, will be AD compliant as they're put into place?
As we build new facilities, they meet the code that's in place. And so that would impact the Culpeper property. It would also impact the Hayfields property that's being transferred from VOF to the state park system, as well as we have another property that is in land holding status down in Henry County called Mayo River. So if development happened there, yes.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate O'Rourke. It sounds like you have to have a budget and financing plan, and I wouldn't wait until December of 2023 to launch it. So do what you need to do to get some budget amendments into the governor's budget.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question on some of the cabin upgrades that we are seeing. This is an issue that I've been really concerned about for the past few years. I have a constituent who also is a neighbor who is passionate about our state parks and passionate about using the cabins there, but he has been frustrated in previous years by issues of availability and is really happy that we are upgrading our cabin facilities. So a couple of questions. The first question is, would it be overly cost prohibitive to make sure that all of our cabins are ADA compliant so that individuals in wheelchairs and other accessibility needs are able to use the variety of cabin options that are available? And secondly, I was wondering if you could kind of walk through some of the accessibility features. One concern that my constituent has in particular is access to showers. When we're talking about ADA compliance, putting the handrails on in bathtubs and so forth is often necessary to meet the minimum threshold for compliance features. But if you are an individual in a wheelchair and need access to bathing facilities, having the option to roll into a shower is far more preferable, especially if you need assistance in navigating a bathtub. So when we're talking about meeting those ADA compliance, are they really looking at wheelchair-bound individuals and how accessible all those features are for such folks?
So when we build a new cabin and we are addressing accessibility in that cabin, a new ADA compliant or accessible cabin is going to have a zero entry shower facility in it. It's going to have the ability to, for a person in a wheelchair to be able to access a sink. So some of that cabinetry is removed. That could be a barrier. There will be a ramp or an elevator up to the cabin. So I believe in our new construction cabins, those issues are being addressed. In cabins that we're renovating now, those issues are being addressed as well. Renovations that were done 25 years ago aren't going to have zero entry showers. The code would have been different at that point in time. But as we're renovating cabins now, we're addressing each one of those items that you mentioned. As far as availability, our cabins are popular. They book out 11 months in advance. We are at a point now in our system where we're spending significant dollars to upgrade and upfit our cabins. Some of them have not been renovated or remodeled in 50 years. So I wish I could tell you that we were going to be able to alleviate some of those availability concerns, but we're taking so many cabins offline right now to go through a multi-year renovation process that the inventory is going to be tighter for the foreseeable future. The good news is that as we bring the inventory back online, more of those cabins meet the accessibility requirements. So it should begin to address some of that challenge. It is more costly to build a fully accessible cabin or to retrofit a cabin to full accessibility than to not. So that is a factor when we plan out our budgets.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Lawfer?
I was just wondering, based on all that you're saying, do you have, advocacy groups or people with disabilities actually on your board to help when you're, creating the plan so that they are more accessible? Do you understand my question?
I do.
Yeah.
So let me answer that two ways. Each park has an individual friends or support group. I'm not sure of the makeup. And DCR's State Parks Unit, the board has specific powers when it comes to approving master planning documents, but after that it becomes an executive function. But we do take accessibility into account when we're planning and try to provide accessibility where, not only just where required, but where we can. And I think an example is the cabin renovation at Ferrystone. Those historic structures we could have easily said these are historic structures and we can't really alter the footprint to address this issue. But the truth is, those are amazing cabins to stay in, and everyone should have an opportunity to experience that. So we're taking our limited resources and trying to improve those cabins to meet current standards. So I hope that partially addresses your question.
I would just suggest maybe putting that as part of, your suggestions to each of these local boards, that please approach some of these groups and have them be part of the discussion.
Madam Chair, if I may, in
Yes,
further
Delegate
response to Ms. Lawfer's question, Mr. Stovall brought out that the Friends of the State Parks are organized typically around the individual state parks and as a statewide organization, but it's just volunteers. And so I think it's incumbent upon the folks in the disability community to recognize they need to get involved at that local level to have a greater impact, one, on that individual state park that is closely associated to where they are geographically to meet their needs, but then also involvement in the overall state system that's out there. They do a tremendous job supporting the current operations and are a tremendous asset, which your point is well made. They're right now not particularly focused on addressing the ADA needs, and that's largely driven because the folks who are a part of that volunteer group have not included individuals with that as a major focus.
But I guess the issue is, though, is it easy for members of the public or advocacy groups to access the Friends of the Park, the various parks? Do you have contact information listed on each of the park sites, and make it sort of welcoming or at least easy?
The Friends groups are such a vital part of what we do that each park is going to be able to put anyone who's interested, who calls or reaches out, in contact with them.
Okay, I think that's important, and I think we'll note that in our minutes as well. Senator Hashmi, did you have a question?
Madam
Okay.
Chair.
Okay, yes, Commissioner Funk.
Deputy Director Stovall, I wanted to thank you for your presentation today. I am a very frequent flyer of our state parks. I set my alarm. I have a camper, so I don't have the cabin issue, but I have the campsite issue. So I set my alarm 11 months to the day to try to get my reservations, and so I'm already booked out for 2023. So just want to say thank you. I think the whole world since COVID has decided that camping is what we need to be doing. I wanted to thank you for your presentation. I heard a couple times reference to things built to code, not necessarily to the ADA. I totally understand that. I am a member of the Virginia Building Code Officials Association and a local ADA certified coordinator. And I think one of the greatest things that we're finally at is that the ADA and the current building code line up. I think that has been a barrier for many, many years. So I'm very excited that I believe it's 98%. I think there's one handrail that's about 1/4 of an inch off in diameter between the two requirements. So it's great to have that moving forward. I appreciate calling attention to the plan for 2023. I do believe that that is something that many of us will share with our networks as an opportunity to be involved. I also have visited some of your accessible boating launch areas, as one of my board members has put the task in front of me to create one in our locality. So appreciate all the efforts that are going into accessibility. I do tend to walk around every park and check it out and make notes, so I'm pretty sure you'll get a public comment from me. But I want to thank you for your time and for all that the park system does for us, and look forward to the improvements on accessibility. Thank you.
Is there any other comments or questions from commissioners? Okay, well, hearing none, we all enjoyed your presentation. We admire your commitment to making, at one point, every cabin ADA accessible. I know it'll take a while, but that's the goal, and we appreciate that. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, the next item actually came to me and other members of the commission. It's a topic that individuals have brought up. They want to bring something to our attention. And it really has to do with when the sub-minimum wage employment takes place and what conditions. So Donna Bonessi, who is the Director for Employment Services and Special Programs with the Department of Aging and Rehabilitation Services, and David Leung, who is the Director of Workforce Programs at DARS, and Heather Norton, who is the Assistant Commissioner for Developmental Services at the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. So we've got 3 presenters here, or maybe 1 presenter and 2 resource people, however you want to enlighten the commission. You can do it. I introduced all 3 of you. So,
thank you.
So you must be Donna Bonessi.
I am Donna Bonessi. Thank
Welcome.
you, Madam Chairperson, and the Commission for inviting us here to speak today. We're here to give a brief history and overview of the 14C Certificate and Sub-Minimum Wage Program nationally and here in Virginia. We already announced the presenters. So, 14C sub-minimum wage was established within the Fair Labor Standards Act in 1938. It was established for individuals specifically with disabilities to be able to earn or be compensated below minimum wage based upon their productivity. The 14C program allows employers to apply for and receive a certificate from the Department of Labor to compensate individuals with disabilities less than the federal, state, or state minimum wage that is mandated for all workers.
Their wages are calculated based upon an individual's production level with the intent of paying individuals in proportion or commensurate, as we say, to their productivity compared to their workers without disabilities. So in Virginia, we've seen a stark decline in the use of certificates. In 2017, just 5 years ago, 45 employers held a 14C certificate, and more than 3,800 people were compensated below minimum wage based upon their disability. In 2022, this year, only 13 employers hold a 14C certificate, and around 385 individuals are paid compensated below minimum wage. So we've seen a sharp decline in the number of people who are being compensated below minimum wage in the last 5 years. Just this past October, DARS was awarded a $13.8 million federal grant to help those who are remaining in subminimum wage employment transition to competitive integrated employment, and to help youth who may be considering entering subminimum wage employment to experience and enter into what we call competitive integrated employment, which is employment in the general workforce earning wages that are commensurate with the work that's being done. There's also history. Oh, wow, that's because it's this one. Heather, do you want to talk about this one?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Disability Commission. I just wanted to briefly talk about the settlement agreement as it relates to subminimum wage. Specifically, one of the provisions in our settlement agreement focuses on individuals with a goal of employment in integrated work settings as the first priority service option, as is outlined in our Employment First state policy. And specifically, this speaks to individuals making paid minimum or competitive wages. So moving away from the utilization of subminimum wage for reimbursement for individuals.
Thank you.
So next we wanted to talk about, we hear a concern that people are at risk of losing their benefits if they earn more than minimum wage or work more than a certain number of hours a week. So we're going to talk about ways that benefits can be preserved while anybody is working and earning a living wage and receiving benefits. I'm going to ask David to come on up and talk about these.
Okay.
Thank you, Donna.
Welcome.
I'll give it a click. Okay.
This is David,
So
David Leo.
there are multiple methods to allow individuals to maximize their employment and their earnings while maintaining those critical health benefits. And that can be achieved through work incentives related to supplemental security income, which include the student earned income exclusion that allows students up to age 24 to have a significant portion of their earnings not counted against those benefits. Another item called impairment-related work expenses, which again allows all of the money that the cost of having a disability and going to work to not count against those earnings. And there's a formula Social Security uses. It would be a very in-depth conversation if you're interested. There's also 1619B, which allows individuals, if they go over the threshold, to keep their Medicaid. Virginia is one of 8 states where it's not automatic. You do have to apply for that. In most states, it's an automatic option that if you earn over that $1,550 roughly amount, you keep your Medicaid. So those are the SSI main work incentives that could be utilized. With Social Security disability insurance, oh, it's right in front of me now. Sorry about that. There are a few others. One includes the trial work period. So if someone has SSDI, they can basically work for a year and earn $10,000 a month and not a single thing happens to their benefits.
A question, Mr. Leone. I would expect Virginia would have to ask for some kind of permission from the federal government, either a waiver or an exception. Is there a process?
To ask for that for?
To ask to either exempt student earned income or impairment-related work expense or the Medicaid for working individuals.
Yeah. All of these I'll get to on the next slide. I just wanted to kind of explain some of the mechanism. And I will be happy to talk about how in Virginia people access these.
Got it.
Additionally, there's a term called substantial gainful activity, that dollar amount that is kind of that break point of keeping certain benefits or losing them. There's the extended period of eligibility. There are subsidies, impairment-related work expenses. And for people with SSDI, there's something called expedited reinstatement, meaning if someone does go to work above these levels, but then cannot keep working at above those levels, they can get their benefits back the very next month. And how can people learn about these incentives, benefits, and actually get to them? Virginia is really strong in what is called work incentives and benefits planning. We're seen as a national leader across the country in this work. We currently have over 115 people who are fully credentialed to provide these services one-on-one to the individuals who need them as they go to work. Not only do we provide those services through what we call work incentive specialist advocates, in Virginia we support state-specific software that is a benefits calculator to not only show what happens if someone earns more money, but exactly which work incentives will apply and how to utilize them. Furthermore, if it's a client of our agency or the individual is receiving waiver services, we've developed a fee-for-service model so that we can pay to make sure those individuals get the help they need as they're making the decisions to go to work. We really want this to be an informed choice about earnings and maximizing your opportunity for employment, community engagement, while at the same time protecting those critical health benefits. Additionally, for individuals who are not within the waiver system or receiving VR services, they can access the Ticket to Work program, and there are roughly 25 Ticket to Work employment networks in Virginia that have certified work incentive specialists on staff. There's also the WIPA project, which is a federal program, and all 308,000 people currently who receive SSI or SSDI can call the 800 number and get help today if they need it. There are 2 of those programs in Virginia. One is in the Norfolk area, and the other is the rest of the state. So that's how people will get access to those.
Let me just ask a general question. If an individual wants to access one of these programs that we just talked about, are you telling me that accessing these programs and making more than the minimum wage would not disqualify them for any current programs they may be receiving necessarily, like?
Every case is different.
Every case is
and
different.
in generalities, what I would say is 99% of the time, we can help someone earn as much as they're capable and keep the critical health benefits.
Such as Medicaid?
Yes, such as Medicaid. That does not mean that that check from Social Security doesn't go down.
Sure.
That's a different issue, right?
That's a different issue, yeah.
And again, these services are free to the individuals who qualify, which is anyone with SSI, SSDI.
Do you promote these services?
Very much, very much. All right, and I think that was the end. And I would just say, when we look at the minimum wage going up, one of the things we did proactively as an agency was look at our last few years, calculate out what that would look like. We created new services that can be used through our follow-along program and through waiver services, specifically so that individuals would be able to say yes and not have to reduce their hours.
Now, the minimum wage we're referring to would be Virginia's minimum wage?
Yes.
I would hope, just for clarification, because we, as you know, the General Assembly a few years ago did pass a graduated increase in the minimum wage. Okay, Commissioner Lawfer, did you have your hand up? And then Delegate Hope. Commissioner Lawfer.
Thank you so much, actually. So this would be the #1 issue that I hear from parents, and quite frankly, I have a child with a disability. And a couple of things I would say. First, I feel like I'm pretty well versed in this stuff. I'm going to every everything I can to be educated about it. And I really did not know a lot about this. So I'm just, as just a consumer, a potential consumer, I would like to say the conversation about when your child becomes an adult and what could possibly happen. You know, as a school board member, I had advocated that we actually start that conversation in middle school and maybe even elementary school, just to help the parents. And I would say this kind of conversation could almost start in middle school. You know, so I'm just putting that out there. I have so many friends that have children. It's a cliff after high school. Post-high goes till 21 years, but then it's another cliff. So I don't know how you're, you know, helping with this, but I would love to hear how you are.
We've heard the cliff. We've heard about the cliff, and we are trying, working diligently with school systems to get that education earlier, working to get our VR counselors into the school systems earlier. Coming out of post-COVID, some of the schools are still operating differently, and so we're working with the Department of Education to make sure that we're getting that information, because we've heard there's a cliff. COVID helped us learn that there was a cliff, and we've heard that very exact term used. I think Heather wanted to say something else too.
I just wanted to mention that the Commission on Youth also identified this as an issue, and there's some work that's going to be occurring between DBHDS and the Department of Education around specifically work to get information into the school system's hands to make that transition go a little bit more smoothly going forward.
Yes, Commissioner Lawfer, follow up? Or,
I did have a follow-up, if you don't mind. I know there's, well, I'm in the Charlottesville area, and we have Piedmont Regional Education Program, the PREP, which is kind of a consortium of many counties that come together for children with special needs, you know, physical therapy. You probably all know that. You know, they host lots of workshops throughout the year. And that's how I found out about the waiver. I was, you know, so I'm just suggesting that if there's any regional education programs, having, you know, being part of their discussion, especially their workshops, which are super well attended, I would say.
And I'll add two other things we've started. We partnered with PTSI earlier this year. Someone on my staff is working on creating trainings for parents specifically around the transition from high school to deal with the misinformation, right? People all the time, don't go to work when you graduate. And we're really trying to combat that. The other thing we added 3 years ago, but because of COVID, it sort of sputtered at first. We created a service that can be offered in the schools that we call Maximizing Career Earnings. And it's a beginning discussion on transferable skills, Holland's codes, what work would look like, and your earnings. And everyone leaves those with very basic generic information about those work incentives. And because it's PREITs, we don't know who in the room might have them, but we are really trying wherever we can to have the conversation, make sure families get this information to promote work.
One last thing I wanted to mention is that DBHDS, DARS, and the Department of Medical Assistance Services were actually supposed to start meeting tomorrow around this particular issue to really discuss what are the options in front of us to ensure that individuals do not lose their benefits as a result of work. And so this was timely because we were also starting that discussion just to look at the things that we have available to us, how we expand them, and then how we communicate about them out into the public.
I'm glad we're having this conversation. Delegate Hope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first, I want to thank you for including this topic on the schedule at last minute, because I thought it was really important to educate the commission about 14C, and that's my question I want to devote to, and then, of course, a comment to it. You mentioned that Virginia received a $13.8 million grant. And I believe the purpose of that was to wean us off the, 13 employers that currently are exercising the 14C. Were there any strings attached to that money, or was it just sort of given to us and we can keep adding people to the program?
We have 5 years to help individuals who are currently employed in 14C transition to competitive integrated employment. There are parameters around that through the Rehabilitative Services Administration, RSA. We did have to develop a grant proposal. We do need to follow the grant proposal. We are calling it our EPIC project, and we're going to help people transition. We're going to provide education to families, communities about transitioning to competitive integrated employment, develop partnerships, local communities, so that individuals have the support they need at the local level. We're also going to provide those individualized services and build the capacity for the providers to transform their service lines to helping individuals transition out of subminimum wage.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
I
Delegate
think
Hope.
the question for the commission is that the Virginia Code still permits 14C waivers to be granted to allow the continuation of employers to pay substandard minimum wage. Yet, we've accepted $13 million from the federal government for the sole purpose to wean us off the program. And so you think the issue is we've still got this provision in our code. We should eliminate this provision in our code. And I would note that most states have already done that. That's the purpose of the waiver and the federal money that's coming our way. And I would like to see if there is a desire amongst the commission to make that recommendation that we do close the door so that people aren't continuing to grow the program. It looks like it's being closed self-selectively, because you mentioned the reduction from 2017 to 2022. But still, I think it should be a policy that at least the federal government is telling us in a bipartisan way. By the way, I didn't mean to make a speech here, but Kathy McMorris Rogers and Bobby Scott, both Democrat and Republican, have championed this at the federal government, have been responsible for this federal money going across the country. Virginia, I'm glad, has applied for its portion of it. But I do think that this is a message that we need to close that door. And so I would like to see if there is an appetite for the commission to make a recommendation that we draft legislation to repeal the 14C part of our Virginia code.
Okay, let's put that on hold for one moment. I'd like to hear back from our speakers. Is this something you are considering as a recommendation?
That's something that I would need to refer back to my agency commissioner.
Let me ask you this. If an employer chooses to apply this 14-point-C certificate, if you will, do they have to go to, is there some kind of review who grants that certificate? And what criteria are you using?
That's not something that we do at the state level. That's done from the U.S. Department of Labor, and they apply directly to the U.S. Department of Labor. The state agency has nothing to do with that.
So the fact that it's in our statute really doesn't create a pathway for the Virginia administrators, if you will, or Virginia program managers to permit it. It's just informing folks that they in fact could go to the federal government.
The employers can. Well, are you asking about how employers receive a 14C certificate to be able to pay people below minimum wage?
I'm asking what our current statute actually permits. What does our current statute?
Our current statute permits employers to apply to the federal government to pay subminimum wages.
So if we removed that, we'd be saying employers could not apply to the federal government under any condition.
13 states have already passed legislation no longer allowing those 14C certificates in their states.
Delegate O'Rourke.
Madam Chairman, and while in general I concur with Delegate Hope's comments, my concern, what happens when the federal money's not there? And first, do no harm. I agree with the general concept, but I'm a little hesitant today if you're trying to push for that to be a recommendation for this coming session. I'm thinking that's a little premature in my mind, that we need to hear more from the agency and department and see how it's working out. And it sounds like the current status quo, if we let that go another year, we're moving in the right direction on its own. We'll have a better handle on whether we're at a time to do away with the 14C provision. And we've done no harm by delaying that. So that's my kind of general initial reaction, Patrick, to your idea. I don't oppose it, I'm just not sure I want to make the full commitment. I want to get my feet wet before I jump in.
I can also send a letter asking that this recommendation be considered by the task force and to come back.
Obviously, we want to hear from other stakeholders, from disability groups. And I did, just a sort of full disclosure, I did bring a bill last session, and it got a lot of discussion even after the bill was laid on the table very gently, because I think, to your point, people agreed with this. The difference is that we've now got federal money, and because the concern is that you currently have people employed, how are you going to make up that delta?
Right.
Well, we have federal money to do that. And so we do have an opportunity as a commission, as a General Assembly, to say, hey, look, we don't believe that people with disabilities should be paid substandard minimum wage. And that's what 13 states have done. I think it might be more, I don't know, but I think it's a growing list. But that's the purpose behind the federal dollar.
And we absolutely agree with that. And obviously, we got a grant. So we have to honor that. I would think we'd have to honor that mission. So it would be my expectation that your work group would come up with some kind of transition plan, and then we could remove the 14.C. You immediately. Immediately.
In our grant application, there was no requirement to end sub-minimum wage, though, however, that was the spirit.
That was the spirit. Well, we're going to probably give you more direction so you can enjoy that spirit even more. Commissioner Walker.
I just wanted to say, if you're confused about what this may look like, there was a facility in Charlottesville, and it's a seasonal work. It's for, putting together little packets for, holiday gift giving. And it's very isolated. These are going to be individuals being alone, which, by the way, a lot of people with disability are alone, and they, that's part of the problem. So you have a work environment where they are alone. They're getting a quarter for each box that they put together. Some of them will only earn $1.75 a day, maybe 50 cents. So what I would just say is I'm with the spirit of ending this. We don't want to have people with disability separated and then also making so very little. So I'm just showcasing what this might look like in the day-to-day world.
Are there other comments? Delegate Ho, would you feel that we're getting close to closing the door if I sent a letter to, would it be the director of DARS or?
This is actually, sub-minimum wage employment is not a service that DARS participates in. And so while we have the grant from Rehabilitative Services Administration to transition people, we don't fund or participate in sub-minimum wage employment. We're working with individuals to leave sub-minimum wage employment. Not sure who the right person would be for such a letter.
So I guess I'm asking who the right person would be, so we could articulate a sense of this commission that we want to reach a place where there's a smooth transition. Folks who are currently on sub-minimum wage are not left without opportunities to make a minimum wage. And we, at some point, we would like to remove the option from our statute. But my sense is we need a couple of steps in there, and I would like to, staff, I'm sure, can figure this out. Mr. Bremer probably can tell us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a little bit outside of my area of expertise, but I will commit to figuring it out with my colleagues who staff Commerce and Labor. We can check in with the appropriate stakeholders.
You've already introduced a bill.
I have not, but sometimes that's what you need to do, is introduce a bill.
You are welcome to do that. I would still think as a commission, though, I would like to get our collective thoughts on paper and send it to the right party. Is there an interest in that option? Okay, so Delegate Orrock.
Madam Chairman, I think you have consensus.
Okay, all right. Unless there's an objection, we will articulate a pathway forward that we just described. And I will work with staff to figure out who to send that letter to.
We'll be happy to help.
Okay, great. Yes, Commissioner Laughlin.
I wanted to push this more about working with the schools, because we talk a lot about career and technical education. This is a group of people that are capable of working and what is the, employment rate is like 2% of people with disabilities. So if there's any way to be working with school divisions to implement these programs, and there's a lot of employers that are interested in this. I mean, Centera has a program. I'm sure you're well aware of the project.
Search.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also Marriott has programs. These are huge employers that need these kind of individuals. So my suggestion would be that we implement DARS into the schools themselves. So, thank you.
We have a specific set of services for students with disabilities that we're growing within in the schools.
Chairman Bavola?
Yes, Commissioner Funk.
Sorry. I wanted to agree with Commissioner Lawfer. I think I said that correct. As a former school board member, I also had the opportunity to have a stronger voice when on the school board. And I don't think we can say it's necessarily a result of COVID, but I think COVID has probably exacerbated a lot of what we are experiencing, and it's time for us to come back, all of us, and redefine how we share information. I appreciated hearing that the Department of Ed is somewhere in this picture of being at the table, as there are some school divisions that are a lot more receptive and open to quote-unquote outside entities coming in versus others. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that there can be a system change of allowing more open doors for the outside entities to share this information and to bring these programs into the schools where the students are at. So that was my comment. Wanted to thank you for your time.
It's great comments, commissioners. Thank you, presenters. We've learned a lot. Thank you very much. Colleagues, we're going to move on to our next agenda item. And it's discussion of an adoption of our 2023 work plan. I did ask that public comments be presented in writing prior to the meeting, and we did get a fair number of public comments. So thank you to those of you who took the time to let us know what issues you felt were important. Staff went through all of the issues and at my request organized the topics according to subject areas. So you should have the document before you. It's suggestions for the 2023 interim work plan is what it should be. What I would like to do with this commission is it's a model that the Commission on Youth has used very successfully. And what we would take a topic or a broad umbrella topic like we have here, housing and transportation, education, employment, publicly funded services. So we take a topic and two commissioners would be part of a subcommittee that also contains stakeholders, a broad range of stakeholders, and staff would identify the broad range of stakeholders. And the committee would meet a couple of times and actually come up with recommendations for the broader commission to adopt. And the recommendations would be advertised for public comment. And then the next meeting, the commission would take action. Is that something you all would be interested in? Do you have the bandwidth to maybe serve on a subcommittee that really would be talking to stakeholders and trying to figure things out? I think so, right?
Well,
Okay.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, Delegate O'Rourke.
My initial hesitancy in that regard is I think, candidly, we all need to be equally aware of the needs within all these areas. And so while I would put faith in any folks on the commission serving as a subcommittee, as it were, if we need to delve more time into each of these areas, I think the more appropriate means, personally, we just have more commission meetings so that we can hear the full breadth of the needs within those areas, personally.
Yes, we can have more commission meetings, which is a very valid suggestion. We can also have, though, sort of two members who have delved even deeper sort of guide the conversation and make sure we all get the same information. Point well taken. So the topics that came up before is certainly housing and transportation. I would think that we would all agree with the 4 bullets under housing and transportation, and the same with education and employment. And I would point out that under education and employment, we did consider abolishing the 14C certificates for sub-minimum wage. So, and then publicly funded services, as you all know, there's an interest in ensuring that individuals who are on the DD waiver be able to retain a little bit more of the money that they may be earning in, in integrated employment examples, so they can, have more money for personal needs. And we received a letter from Mr. Findlay, who was actually in the audience. It talks about how some states he offers a suggestion, which the subcommittee needs to consider, and then the full commission would need to consider. But his suggestion would be that, SSDI not be counted, and he gives reasons why. So this letter would be part of the direction to the subcommittee on publicly funded services. And I would also, with your permission, I would like to take Mr. Findlay's letter and forward it to probably DMAS and get their response, so we all see the response. So if there's no objection, I would like to go ahead with that. I guess, could you make a motion, Delegate Orrock?
Well, Madam Chairman, and if you want, I can make a broad one.
Why don't you make a broad one?
First, Madam Chairman, I'm going to move that we adopt the work plan for the 2023 interim session. I am going to then further modify it, though, Madam Chairman, to where that we do that whereby a timeline for completion of any potential budgetary implications would be finished by September. There was, just a little background, this is not part of my motion per se, but back when I was chair of this commission many years ago, we implemented what was supposed to be an ongoing policy whereby if there were budgetary requests that were going to come from the commission, we needed to make those known by September and prioritize them so they could be communicated then to the governor for consideration in his budget for the upcoming year. And I think that's kind of fallen off the plate of late. And so with that caveat that this work plan would be whereby any monetary matters would be resolved by our September meeting and prioritized for communication to the governor, and that further all public comments the chairwoman might feel relevant would be forwarded to DMAS or other appropriate agencies for their response, and at least for their making them aware of those concerns.
Okay, very good. And included in your motion would, of course, be the
Specific,
Okay, making sure that this letter gets to DMAS. Okay, that's a great motion. And by budget implications, he's talking about our September 2023 meeting, and we will be sending out a calendar of potential dates for our meetings over the next year to commission members, so you can get them on your calendar. So I'll work with staff, and we'll give, we may have to meet a little bit more frequently than we have been meeting.
And Madam Chairman, if for further discussion on the motion, part of the rationale behind prioritizing was that for many years we were seeing conflicting budgetary requests from various parts of the disability community. And so that we would try and come together as a united voice going to the governor, and within that time frame as well, potentially prioritizing, looking in years down the road that wouldn't just be for, be this year's budget, but that then thinking next year, this might be where the commission is going to try and focus our funding priorities.
That's point well taken. Oh, good. Thank you. I needed a second. All right. Since this is such a substantive motion, I am going to ask for a vote. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Commissioner Toles.
Hi, is it possible to add thing early next year. I do have a suggestion to add, but it doesn't have to be added today. One thing I mentioned earlier, I worked briefly with the New York State Office of the Advocate with the Disabled, and it's somewhat similar to our group here, but it was a executive branch agency. We did have full-time staff member, and they did a very ambitious project. I was part of it to produce what they call a book volume called The Consolidated Law of the State of New York for the Disabled. It took 3 years. Actually, I graduated from law school and went to work to Washington for the Treasury Department, though I was not involved in the finishing of it. But I think it was a very useful thing. It was finally produced in 1980, and I have a copy of that.
So it's a whole report.
Book, right, whole big book, and I don't think we need that much. We already have a step to it. There's, a compilation of statutes that Ryan Brimmer did, Maybe
Yes.
it's not all the law, maybe it's does not include the 14C thing, but, it would be a good start to producing a smaller summary of the law of the state of Virginia relating to the disabled. Doesn't have to be 400 page, but maybe someone can look into what involved in producing a simpler summary. And I'd be glad to loan my copy to the DLS of that consolidated law, or maybe they could get it from the University of Virginia Law School Library, assuming they have a set of the New York State statutes.
Okay, so I'm interpreting that request to be a compilation of
A
actions.
summary, right?
Okay.
Summary,
Yes.
based partly on this, mostly on this.
Okay, all right, we can do that. And I do want to draw your attention to the report on the interim activities of the Disability Advisory Commission. So this is a report of everything we've done with minutes. So we're heading that way.
Okay.
We're heading that way. Okay, Commissioners, there's a motion before us. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody wishing to oppose, signify so, or wishing to abstain, signify same way. Hearing none, that passes unanimously, our work plan. Thank you, staff, for going through all the comments and organizing them in a way that makes some sense. One other quick question, and I will ask Mr. Bremer's not here, but on the interim activity report, were we expected to adopt this?
We'll update the report with a meeting summary from today's meeting, as well as recommendations adopted. And we'll send around a revised copy for members to review prior to publishing it.
Okay, great, thank you. So this will be helpful to the public. Okay, thank you, Trevor.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Just, Delegate Hope.
I note that other commissions that I'm on are adopting a virtual meeting procedure.
Policy?
Yeah. And I'm wondering, does this commission, are we to do that? It's our last meeting, so I don't know that we need to this year, but will we going forward?
We
have to
can
do
in
that?
2023.
All right.
I sit on the Joint Commission on Healthcare, and I thought that the policy we adopted there, you too sit on the Joint Commission on Healthcare. I thought that policy was reasonable. You had a little bit of a debate on it, but yes, we will come forward with something. Right now, we're following the FOIA endorsed policy, but we'll be back. First meeting next year, we'll put that on the agenda. Okay? Yes, Mrs. Cummings.
Question. The letter that we got from Dennis Finley, there was a request out for people to respond to it. And Connie responded to it, and I was just making to see if we could include that.
Yes, yes, we can include that.
Sent to Trevor and Ryan, where they had requested.
Yes. Mr. Finley's letter will be sent to DMAS, and I am going to.
Donna wrote something as well to kind of support it.
Right, I'm going to write a cover letter, so I will include, Connor's comment and other comments. So I'll be writing sort of a transmittal letter. Okay, I will now ask Trevor if there's anything more that should come before this committee. Do we have any other business before the committee today?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, commissioners, do you have any announcements or any other issues you want to bring up today? Okay, hearing none, I will adopt the House of Delegates procedure. The committee shall rise.
You are the queen.